Hey Rebels, welcome back to the channel. I know I'm a day late, but it's time to do another weekly update. So it looks like we're starting to get a little correction here. We had a little correction the last couple of weeks in Bitcoin, which is something that I've been waiting for and kind of hoping for, because we were starting to get overextended in this swing right here. You can see we have 6 bars in one single swing direction. And what Gann talks about is 7 or more bars in one single swing direction typically is getting overheated. And so what can happen is if we were to get 7 or more swings and break into, higher territory here, the correction afterwards can be a little bit more severe. So it's kind of nice that we're getting this cool down a little early. And also what I'm seeing in the charts is a potential setup basically for a third time breakout that Gann talks about that as well. And I've talked about that many times on the channel. And I'll just kind of set that up for you. Whoops. I'll just set that up for us so you can kind of see what I'm talking about. And there's many examples of this that I've gone over in previous videos. But basically what this is saying is typically if we have a break on this fourth time, that move is typically a genuine move. Now you can't have false signals, of course, but anyway, it's setting up nicely for a third time breakout, fourth time breakout rather. So that's kind of nice to see. And also definitely just sitting in strong territory. So if we can kind of accumulate in this zone right here, we're definitely accumulating in strong territory, which means the next move potentially can be pretty accelerated and pretty strong. So that's kind of what I'm seeing here. We'll just have to see what happens now that we have this swing direction up. If we break these lows, we'll actually be in a weekly downtrend, which would definitely slow things down, and we'd have to just take that as we come. So the other thing I'm noticing here too is I have this timeline here. I'll do more time analysis in other videos. I'll kind of break that down, but basically based on previous cycles, this is the date range typically when you would see a cycle peak. Now, there's also other theories about there of a lengthening cycle and maybe perhaps liquidity coming into the system, more on the back end of the cycle will be more back end heavy on the cycle. The ISM is another metric that I haven't looked at in a while that maybe I can get to as we scroll down here and show how that relates to the cycles in the past. I have talked about it in other videos, but it's probably worth revisiting. USDT dominance. Now, usually when I zoom in on these charts, I'm like, oh, it's just so messy, and I don't really bother explaining exactly what's going on. So I'm just going to take a quick moment to go over what I'm seeing here. So again, with the Gann fourth time breakout rule, what I'm seeing here on this weekly chart is we have 1, 2, 3. And if we break this level, that should generally be a genuine move. And I got to take this off the logarithmic actually. And that would be really bullish for the altcoins and Bitcoin alike. And then what this mess is right here is what I've done here is I've projected this move right here, this move off of this high. So if we had a repeat of this move from this point right here, what would that look like? And those are kind of zones that the market seems to be attracted to, like the 100% level and the 150% level, meaning that this level right here is 150% of this move right here. And I've used that on a weekly time frame. So these are generally stronger signals. And if we do make it to this 150% level, that would be a place where I'm definitely looking to take profits. If we happen to screech down here into this zone here, which is a support band that I've drew, years ago, basically. And it also corresponds very heavily with this 200% move. I would probably be completely out of the market there because, trying to think that you're going to squeeze any extra juice out of it, I think would be dangerous, basically. So, and then zooming in, I have another kind of shorter term third time breakout on a weekly chart where we have 1, 2, 3. If we get this breakdown, again, that's a bullish signal right there. So in a neutral on the weekly, actually, we had another run higher here, but rejected off of this 50% level and closed basically right at this other significant support that I have here. And the other thing that is significant about this particular level, this is the 50% level of this move that I just described. That's the 50% level. And you can see as I was saying in other videos, we're kind of between a rock and a hard place because you have this support band here. This trend line is basically called every Bitcoin all-time high or Bitcoin top in its history. And so actually we kind of already, you know, had something historic happen when we broke down from this level. And so we had a pretty major acceleration in the altcoin market. We actually did break this basically all-time support band, and we're getting support on it now. So we'll just have to see. I mean, this will be mega bullish if we come down to these levels and break through. If we're set up and we've positioned ourselves, well, we should be positioned already, and that's basically going to be really, really good for the altcoin space. Bitcoin dominance, again, just creeping higher. I don't expect this to change anytime soon. We're at this resistance level, and if we go through, then we have some room to the upside. That doesn't mean that altcoins go down. It just means that Bitcoin leads the charge, and that's usually how it happens. Is typically Bitcoin will lead the charge, and then once Bitcoin is, strong all-time high price discovery areas, then the altcoins catch a bid, and then they will outperform for a period of time. And I'll show you what that looks like here with this chart. Still on a weekly. Yeah. So these boxes here represent an altcoin season. Basically, this is the altcoin market versus Bitcoin. And you can see that most of it basically oscillates is what I can say. So when times are good, it can outperform Bitcoin, and then it will bleed against Bitcoin for a long period of time. Again, a surge of alts against Bitcoin, and then a long bleed. And this basically corresponds with the Bitcoin dominance chart. It's just another way to look at it visually. And so what we would like to see is a break of this trend line getting into these zones here. And I think I have this mapped up as far as time frames go. And so what we're seeing is, this bleed against Bitcoin has happened for longer. And I think that also has a lot of people on edge, which is another reason why a lot of people aren't thinking that we're going to get an altcoin season. But that is exactly what happened the last altcoin season. Is it basically gets drawn out. It's the last little bit of the cycle where things really get frothy and exciting, and new money comes into the space, that we see those parabolic moves in the altcoins. So, and another way to look at this as well is this is the others versus Bitcoin. So the others is an even narrower look at the altcoin space. It excludes a lot of the large players and is looking, into basically the lower end of the spectrum. So it's basically excluding the big ones like ETH and Bitcoin. And so you can see here in the past. Oh, the other thing I wanted to do real quick, because I've talked a little bit about Elliott Wave. I don't necessarily use it a lot in my own analysis, or if I do, I basically piggyback on other people's analysis because, they're pretty simple rules, and it's nice to kind of have somewhat of a roadmap, but it is very subjective. So you kind of have to be careful there. And if I can find my guy here, so let's see. Yeah, okay. So basically, starting from a cycle low, you'll have 3 impulsive waves and then 2 corrective waves. So you have a wave 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's a 5-wave structure that is for the uptrend. And then you'll have a corrective wave, which is ABC. So you'll have A, B, C. And then you'll go on into another leg up. So starting the count over, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then again, a corrective part of the cycle, you'd have an A, B, and C. So let's see. Let me just see if I can make that a little bit more clear. Yeah. So you can kind of see that it follows this pattern of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, A, B, C. These boxes I've drawn out. These are basically the bear markets, the corrective phase, and then into another 5-wave pattern of upside 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then A, B, C to the downside. That's basically the super gist of it. And so it's just kind of interesting. And then, yeah, so this is the altcoins versus Bitcoin. And so we may potentially be getting into a bull market for altcoins, which may also have that 5-wave structure. And what we can see in the past is as we fell into this final wave C of this corrective pattern here, once we broke this channel, that's when the altcoins took off into its 5-wave pattern. And what I have here, again, we're kind of falling into this wedge here. I'll delete this support band that I drew a while back. Altcoins are really weak against Bitcoin this particular cycle, but we're getting squeezed. And so we're seeing volatility decrease and price ranges squeeze. And the way it's kind of been described from a lot of people that I follow is, it's kind of like a coiling spring. Like it gets coiled and pressure. And then once it gets squeezed into this range, that's when it takes off. And that's kind of what happens back here. You can also have it as a channel and it'll break through that channel. So basically indecision because well, actually, this is just a downtrend, but you can have these triangle patterns different ways where it kind of represents an indecision. But in this case, a falling wedge is typically a bullish pattern. So we will have to see how that goes. Something I do have just for fun laid out here is I have this as an overbalance in time and price to the downside. And if we happen to breach this level, then we've effectively had an overbalance in time and price to the downside, meaning it's probably less likely, or at the very least, any rally from here is probably going to be a lower high. So we may not have this 5-wave structure, breach the previous tops like it did last cycle. That's kind of what I'm seeing there. So I just wanted to do kind of a very quick impromptu Elliott wave lesson. Like I said, I don't use that all the time in my analysis. However, for this cycle, it has been very useful to know when the wave threes are going to be because those are typically the strongest. And I'll show that in a minute. One thing I have noticed that this cycle is different, where this corrective wave of alts bleeding against Bitcoin has happened for a much longer period of time, where the altcoins have basically bled against Bitcoin for almost 100 weeks more than the previous cycle. That's all very interesting, especially seeing as Bitcoin dominance has also trended down over the cycles. It peaks less high every year, which I guess could be expected because there's more in the space. So there's more options in the space to choose from. So I could see that over time Bitcoin could lose dominance just because the entire market is getting bigger and so anyway, it'll be interesting to see how that pans out, especially as we get into the following bear market. It will be very interesting to see what altcoins survive. And I would imagine that after that secular bear market of several years to the downside, whatever survives, I think there's going to be massive opportunity there. So anyway, I'm going on a tangent. What I did want to point out, since we're just talking about the Elliott wave structure, is that this wave right here was a wave 3. And so that's what we're getting into now. There also are substructures, and so this was a substructure, but the wave 3 of that substructure, wave 3s are typically the longest and strongest. And so what we're seeing right now set up is another substructure of a wave 1 and a wave 2, and we may have seen the this might be the bottom of the wave 2. Like that's what I'm seeing. So it's like we're seeing the altcoins squeeze at the bottom of that wedge, which is a bullish pattern. It's just getting pinched, and when it decides to go, it's going to go quick whenever that happens, either up or down. I'm anticipating to the upside because just of the market structure that we're seeing and the timing of the cycle. And a lot of people are basically saying, oh, altcoin season, there's not going to be any altcoin season, which also has me more bullish, because if most people think that there's not going to be an altcoin season, there's probably going to be an altcoin season. When everybody has been expecting an altcoin season this entire time and all everybody's been talking about is an altcoin season, it's no surprise that there hasn't really been a very strong altcoin season. So now that people are losing faith and have disbelief that this will even happen, is probably a better time to be positioned, which is something that I've learned. I mean, honestly, being in Bitcoin this whole time would have been amazing. You can just see that in the charts. That's the data. Being in Bitcoin, you'd have made an absolute killing. You'd have made a 6x, 6 to 5x. If you got it at 20,000, you didn't pick the exact low, but, there were a lot of signals around 20,000 that's when, that was the bottom of the market as far as that cycle. That was the cycle bottom. So anyway, big 5x just chilling, not doing a damn thing, and you could have been continuously adding to that position the whole time and enjoying the upside for the last 3 years. You could have basically dumped, as much of your savings as you wanted to in Bitcoin, and at least from the bear market lows, you'd have made a 5x, and then the next year you'd make a 2x, and anyway, so on and so forth. But what I'm seeing here is one thing I want to do, just because I'm looking at it, is do another extension. I've done various extensions here, but we'll use this tool again and see if we can't find some confluence here. I have this speed line here projected from this low, gets us to, roughly the 130 zone. And I also saw some other confluence. There was other projections that I did, shorter term projections that had some confluence with this zone, which is why I drew this resistance band here. And the other aspect is, let me just double check, make sure I'm not on logarithm. Oh, I am on logarithm. Okay, anyway. So anyway, what I'm getting at is there's also confluence basically in this zone. So from basically, 133 to 140, I would expect there to be pretty significant resistance. So if we do pop out of this, which has been basically a long-term forever resistance band, just like the USDT has been like a forever support band, if we do at the end stages of this real estate cycle finally get a large enough push to get us out of this would basically be the last parabolic run for the cycle, something looking like this perhaps. And now I don't want to get it crazy into price targets or anything like that, because that's not necessarily what I'm doing. I mean, I don't use these as, oh, I'm going to sell here, but I am going to expect resistance here. So, depending on my plan, I may use that as areas to reduce positions or to get out of the market completely, because it's just, you'll always have to have a plan. And so I'd like to use these projections to kind of give me an idea of like, okay, well, where can I expect resistance? If we had an exact repeat of this move, that gets us about here. I've had various other projections here. So, I mean, basically overall, we're looking at this zone here, right? I would expect a lot of resistance. Now, maybe it comes back down for a retest and we keep going. But it's hard to say. So what I'd rather do is follow the weekly swing chart. And when we get a breakdown of this swing and we're no longer in a weekly uptrend, that would probably be that's a pretty good signal as well to potentially get out of the market and just call it good. Like, you're never going to call the exact bottom or call the exact top, and things do get more volatile, which means things get more emotionally volatile, which means you can do really silly things. So anyway, let me just diving into the daily chart. We basically have this like V-shaped recovery here, and we had basically max ETF inflows right here, which called the top. Again, retail was late to the party, and we also had a pretty significant flush of outflows of the ETFs. Basically use that as kind of an inverse indicator. So we're seeing rising prices right now, which is good. And let's see if we just draw a trend line as objectively as we can, not trying to curve fit. We have broken out of this downtrend right here, short term. So we'll see how that plays out. The one thing, caveat to this that I would say is potentially going to hold up the show or introduce some more fear to the market or slow things down, however you want to look at it, is the exchange volume is still, again, not looking too good. Yeah. So you can see that we had this breakout of that double top, which was nice. And we were very early in that move and we had a few small positions. And this is pretty much exactly why, because, it's not like we had this massive increase in volume for a very long sustained period. We were just starting to get the initial signals that we could be potentially bottoming. And so again, but we've just kind of had this slow bleed over time and the sentiment has cooled down. These are all good, healthy things, but the exchange volume itself definitely want to see this increase sooner than later. That doesn't mean it has to go parabolic tomorrow, but in the next few weeks, I would, or month, I would imagine that we would want to see this at least flatten out or start ranging and accumulating to push higher. But so far we are seeing basically higher lows, basically from last year to these lows. We are bottoming a little bit higher every time, which is bullish. But right now we are very obviously in a short-term downtrend. We basically broke this. You can't see it, but we basically broke the downtrend and started to form higher highs and higher lows, getting us into a macro uptrend. Um, and so we will have to see where this bottoms. And if this bottoms higher than this, then we're still in that macro uptrend, but we are in a short-term downtrend. So it basically just means that although prices are going higher, it's not going to take much for the prices to snap back down very quickly. So we'll just have to keep an eye on that. That's all very short-term, granular stuff. That's why I like to keep to the weekly charts, because the weekly charts kind of just keep things nice and calm. There's so much emotion that you get to avoid by zooming out to these levels and just seeing where the actual strength is. Something that I saw that I really like. I kind of go back and forth between using logarithmic trend lines and regular trend lines. Basically, a logarithmic scale will change the scale to fit all the data on one chart. So actually, that's really obvious if I go to zoom out here. It just fits all the data in one chart. And if I take it off logarithmic, which makes everything completely scalable, even scale, it's harder to interpret this data down here because and so you have to change the scale of things to be able to visualize all the data on one chart. So, but anyway, the point being is if we have this logarithmic trend line from these two peaks right here, we got support. Excuse me. We did get support right on that. In fact, I'll just clean this up as well. Yeah, so you can see we got nice support right on that. And we got support on this trend line from way back here. And you can kind of see that the market has interacted with this trend line pretty consistently. So yeah, I think that's about all I have for now. If I just jump into the total crypto market, we can kind of see it's definitely in a weaker position than Bitcoin. And again, I have this projection here where if we have the same run up projected from this lows, we can see, we're below the 50% of this range, the 50% of this projection. But we're not there yet. And if we do end up, blasting through this resistance band, this 1.5 area is an area that I really want to look for confluence and look at these other charts and these areas that I've been talking about and see, if these things start to kind of line up, the stars align where we're meeting some of these levels at the same time. These would be areas that I would definitely look to be taking some profits or at least finding some resistance. So if we use this chart, which is the total three minus the stable coins, it gives us more of a accurate representation of the actual altcoins themselves. And you can see that they're in weak territory but potentially setting up some kind of reverse head and shoulders here, like so fashion, which is a bullish pattern here. Basically, you have, let's just do this. This is kind of fun. So you basically have the shoulder here, and then your head, and then your other shoulder. This is considered the neckline. And now what some people will do is they will take this measurement from here, from the head up to the neckline, and then project that from the neckline. And then that gives you a projection, a possible target for this pattern. And you can see that there's a lot of confluence here at the 100% of this move projected from the lows. So I know that's like kind of a lot, but this is just me running through the TA and the way that I look at things and how I interpret it. So either way, this whole area right here is major resistance. And if we are able to enter into price discovery here, we'll pay attention to what the USDT dominance is doing. If it ends up breaking that, all-time support band and Bitcoin's able to go above its all-time resistance band, like this is all really setting up for that alt season. That falling wedge pattern on the others versus BTC. We'll see how that interacts. So I'm just trying to show you how you can't just use one indicator alone, and it does help to kind of have a few charts to see some confluence on, and it definitely helps you stay on the right side of things, because you may notice some weakness in the USDT chart, even though things are looking bullish, but maybe the exchange volume's low and the USDT dominance is showing you signs that it's gaining strength, or the inverse, basically. So anyhow, I think I've rambled on enough for there, and we'll just keep you posted. I mean, honestly, like, I'm fully allocated right now, waiting for this push in the altcoins, and I see that that is potentially happening sooner than later. But we'll just have to follow the charts and see what the charts say. So anyhow, please, if you found this informative, please hit the like button. Please hit the subscribe button. Please leave a comment down below. Anything in the comments is great. Give me a thumbs up. Leave something in the comments. It's really going to help me out. Leave me some feedback. What do you like? What do you want more of? What do you want less of? Do you want my videos shorter, longer, anything like that? Any feedback is very, very helpful. So if you stuck around this long, congratulations. Thank you so much, and we'll see you next time.